Kat with OFN, and I'm thrilled to be joined by Deborah Benita, interfaith warrior, partner to all. So thrilled to be here with you. Can you introduce just sort of yourself and how you kind of, I mean, you're involved in a lot of things, so however you choose to identify tonight.
Well, thank you so much for having us for this conversation, for this space that you're holding for me. And I am a Muslim prison chaplain, and so I am Muslim, but a majority of the people I serve may or may not be. I serve as one of Oklahoma's only prison chaplains, and I'm in a variety of spaces, mainly Oklahoma Department of Correction. I don't work for them. I serve the people that live there. And so, yeah, we do a lot of things like rapid food responses for families that are facing, food insecurities due to incarceration or whatever the case may be. We don't really ask you why you're hungry. We just try to meet that need. We do some just classes and all kinds of things. We also host one of the only in Oklahoma deaf and hard of hearing Islamic classes in sign language. I'm a part of the Deaf Women of Oklahoma. I wear hearing aids. I know nobody can see them, but they're there. And so, yeah, I do a lot of things. Wherever God sends me is where I go.
So you're not just serving the actual inmates, you're serving families as well.
Yes, yes. So people don't do time alone. Like, when you go to prison, um, people do time with you. Your family does time with you. Your loved ones do time with you. Your kids serve, as long as your sentence is, your kids are serving that time with you without your presence, but they are definitely facing the impact of you not being there. And it's difficult for them. And so how do we show up in those spaces for those children?
And what's the process of becoming a prison chaplain?
Well, like any other chaplaincy, there are chaplaincy programs that will allow you to be a chaplain. So let's back up and first of all, just break down what is a chaplain. And chaplain's definition is the ministry of presence. And so, we're different than pastors. Like pastors are shepherding a flock and proselytizing and those things. Chaplains are just present. We are, present for you. Like what are you going through? How can we spiritually guide you? And one of those things in an incarceral space, with our house citizens or people that are incarcerated, whichever language you choose for that, it really is showing up for humanity. So many times, I'm going to sneeze here. Excuse me. So many times, people lose their identity or their identity. I mean, you're assigned a number, and you are that number. And I know there are a lot of processes trying to change that, but in the process of changing, it still exists. And so how do we show up for you in those spaces? And so that is one of the things as a chaplain is the ministry of presence. And then there are organizations that help with chaplaincy. That if that is your goal to be a chaplain, to show it, it's a heavy burden, but there is enough room for everyone to do it.
And I know you had told me in the past that do certain spaces, particularly prisons, have their own sort of definitions or requirements for who's a chaplain and who's not, who can come in?
Well, so the Oklahoma Department of Corrections allows you. I believe that you can, and don't quote me, but you can, if you are a chaplain, you give them your credentials, and they don't, they're not going to microglass that credentials, but they do. They'll take your credentials, and that's how you show up. But there are other places like our Oklahoma County Jail. I can go to federal spaces. I can go to every prison within the Oklahoma Department of Correction. I can go to local jails. I can go to like the K County Detention Center, the Federal Detention Center, but I can't go to the Oklahoma County Jail. They don't recognize me as a chaplain. Yeah, they're a little bit different. And we've shown up and we've had those conversations, and we've had conversations with upper management, and we've had conversations with Lottie Dottie and everybody, and still um we are not I am not allowed to show up as a chaplain.
What is the reason given for that?
Oh, there's a multitude of reasons. They don't accept that I'm a chaplain, just the list goes on. There's like a plethora of nonsensical reasons. And I have given up the fight for that. Um, there's so many other spaces that need help. So we just kind of leave them to their own devices, and they will figure it out, or they won't figure it out, whichever.
Do you have a sort of percentage nationally or in Oklahoma are Muslim or just those who practice non-Christian faiths?
I don't know what the statistic numbers are. I really try not to look at numbers. I know numbers drive a lot of things, but I really try to focus on like people. And so there are roughly 1,200 people that identify as Islam in the Oklahoma Department of Corrections, and not all of them show up in the same way. Some, will come and participate in some of the organized faiths, and some of them don't. Some of them have learned Islam in a different way, and show up a little differently, or want to be Muslim on their own. And we don't judge. I think my daughter was telling me, we hear and we don't judge. We listen and we don't judge. And so that is all right. But we show up for them as well. And we do realize that across the nation, Islam is the largest growing faith in incarceral spaces.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a story I've heard just as someone who I just consume a lot of, documentaries, what have you. And I was reading about that as well, that it's often when someone's in prison that actually their faith either deepens or they sort of discover a newfound faith that they didn't know about.
Think about that. You are in a quiet space.
Mhm.
They're the hustle and bustle of the world. The phones are always going, and there's a text or a TikTok or a this or that. And there's so many things. And when you're there, God really has your attention. You're really able to focus. And, all of this extra chatter and stuff is muted. And so you really have an opportunity to spend some good time with God and hear what he has to say.
And I love, I actually, I was originally wanting to be a chaplain, but I went with social work instead.
They do go hand in hand.
Which I guess is a common sort of crossroads. But I think when I was thinking about being a chaplain, when I looked into programs, when I had moved back to Oklahoma and was looking at programs, and it was very Bible-based, very Christian focused, theology type of, and that just kind of, when I was thinking about being a chaplain, I was thinking about the chaplain at my college, who really was just there exactly how you described, just to listen and to help sort of guide people at a time in their lives when they had big questions about who they were and what life is about and their place in this, on this planet. And so I that's an interesting sort of, I'm hearing those echoes from you as well, that, in this sort of space and time where there is like a lot of quiet stillness, reflection, that your role is to be present, to sort of not guide exactly, but sort of walk with people through that process of asking those big questions.
Yeah, I don't really answer
Connecting.
their question. It's kind of like when someone tells me something, you know, um, recently someone said, I feel like God has abandoned me. And I said, well, tell me how you feel about that. Tell me What are your thoughts? What does abandon mean to you? You know, let's break that down, because I want to understand what
Mhm.
you're saying. I want to understand, where you're coming from. And, so I'm not there to tell them they're right, they're wrong. I'm not there to tell anybody they have to be Muslim or they're supposed to be Muslim, or, any of those things. That is not my role, in life at all. It is definitely, their thing to figure out what it is and what God really wants for them. What is God telling you? Like, how can I help you, tap into what God is telling you? I think is more so the role. That is really what, we should be doing, and not telling people, how they should show up, or anything like that. That's uh not my thing.
And so how do people access you, or how do they find you, or how do you find them?
Well, I honestly believe it's a God thing. Like it truly is a God thing. And for me, I'm very honored and blessed and fortunate, and all of those little words. That Department of Corrections gives me a little more leeway. And so sometimes I will sit in the middle of a yard, sit in the middle of on a park bench outside of like the general area, and people come to me, and it's just being present. It's being present, and having that, okay, God, Allah, Creator, um, bring to me, and I'm sorry, I don't know how to turn that off. um, but bring to me the people that need to see me, need to hear a word from you through me. How can I be a vessel um, for what you have for them? Like, what does that look like? How do I do those things? And so it definitely becomes easier when you move yourself out of the way and allow God just to kind of use you in, whatever arena that is. So, but there's, of course, we do have the space. What is it? Securus, and so people are able to reach me through Securus, and send a message. They're able to put in chaplain requests,
Hmm.
and I do get chaplain requests again from people that are not Muslim. I do predominantly, my goal is to serve the Muslims, because they don't have a whole lot of anybody else to show up in spaces that um, we talk about. And we say our system is like open for everybody, and that, we have like this rehabilitation idea in our head for like reentry. But when rehabilitation requires you to pick a faith or abandon what you believe so that you can get those services, is it really rehabilitation? What are we taking away from them when our language is centered around what we believe and not necessarily what people need? Like, I have called reentry houses and said, hey, we have a sister coming out, or a young lady coming out, or a young man coming out, and they need reentry. And the people are really excited about serving them. And then we say, well, they are Muslim. We would like to be able to provide them with halal food, where it makes sense to do so, and also be able to bring them to prayer. Or we have a great partner, Taiba Foundation, that does overcoming addiction, which is Islamically based. And we'd love to be able to do that addiction course with them through the lens of their faith. And we always are met with, oh, well, maybe there's someplace better for them. And there is not currently in Oklahoma a Muslim reentry house, or a space that is just like open. But when you talk about these spaces, they are Christian spaces. Our badge processes to become chaplains in prison spaces are all held in church.
Hmm.
You know, um, I mean, and if you think even bigger than that, every place I've ever voted, as long as I've been a voter for the state of Oklahoma, has been in a church.
Yes, me too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so, what does our language look like? Our language does not look diverse. You go to interfaith, like prison spaces, and it always opens up with a Christian centered conversation versus a human conversation. Because incarceration, rehabilitation, those are not Christian experiences. Those are not Muslim experience. They are not Jewish or Hebrew, or those are not faith centered experiences. They are human experiences that we should address as human beings.
Have you found that other states are a little bit different? I know Oklahoma is like such a Bible Belt
Oh.
state, and it's just sort of infused in every place we go. Is that different in other states? Have you found?
There are some, but I will say, turning now towards the Islamic community, we don't do a great job. We
Mm.
don't do a great job of serving those people. Dropping off a Quran, a prayer rug, a kufi, or hijab is not reentry work. It is not prison work. It is not seeing about the needs of a citizen. I have a grandchild. I love him. But my grandbaby, if you hand him a book of ABCs when he was, 6 months, a year old, that's not teaching him to read. That's handing him a book. And so the Quran, the Bible, the Torah, any of these books, there needs somebody to be there. My grandfather was a Baptist preacher, and one of his big things was you better understand what therefore is there for. And so understanding, and I don't know if anybody has really read the Quran. It's not something you just sit in front of and just read it and everything just, that's it. It's definitely, you're going through it. That's why we say we're practicing our faith, right? Nobody becomes anything, and you're just that day that you choose. It's a journey. It's a destination, and there are lots of things to see and do on the way of your destination. And I kind of consider us as brothers and sisters of faith as the watering stations. As someone is walking on their journey, we are there to help water them as they go on their way.
How did you get into? Because I'm thinking you're totally right. How would I learn? I mean, is it like any kind of other, like, would it need to be kind of a faith leader to help that process? Or is it just like anybody from these faiths could, like, I'm thinking of like, would you need to be like a spiritual director or
For
no?
for being a chaplain or helping.
Yeah, yeah, sort of like what you're saying, like rather like to take that next step from just like dropping off a rug, a
So
prayer rug
here's
or
the
whatever
thing,
to,
that requires nothing. You don't have to be a chaplain or a minister or a person of a title to serve humanity. Everybody has a gift. Everybody is called to do something, and so you can do something. Like my 7-year-old grandson serves people. If he has an extra sandwich or extra something, you know uh, he wants to give it to someone. He wants to do something for someone else, and it just requires you to have an open spirit. It does not require you to be of a faith. Now, there are certain things in anyone's faith that you would, maybe be required to be that faith, to do something, but to help a human being, I don't believe that you need a title for that. So a prayer rug, a kufi, a scarf, providing hygiene items to everyone. We do a lot of hygiene items in the prison system for women around Christmas, right? But what about the people that don't celebrate Christmas?
mm, mhm.
What does that look like for them? Um, and when we give things, I try to take things to people, not around a holiday, because I'm not asking you to buy into my faith. That is absolutely not what it's about. I'm not asking you to do that. I'm not asking you to abandon who you are and what you think in order for you to have service from me. In Islam, we believe that even a smile is charity. And so there's no strings to help, but help isn't really help if it's not something someone needs. So what do they need? As a human being, what do you need? If you look at the Bible and the Quran and the Torah and all of our faiths, this common string, this common thread for us is to love thy neighbor. You want equal or better for your brothers and sisters than you want for yourself, right? So it's all the same song, different tempo, but same song. And but are we living that? Did the Lord say, love thy neighbor if they think just like you, if they pray just like you, if they vote just like you? Did they, is it smile as a charity only if they're Muslim? No. God is speaking to us about us, people, human beings, folks with a pulse.
What are some other examples of like that, like maybe something that people wouldn't think of where the experience of non-Christians or Muslims would be different? Like the whole, yeah, you're right, that typically even like people tend to have drives for things around Christmas. So that, what are some other examples of those things where there's like there are barriers or just the experience is just different for
looking at the way people show up. So when you are in carceral spaces, the chapel is usually for Christian faiths. The Muslims will be in a classroom, in a meeting room, in a something like that. But the house of worship, the house of faith, is usually for the Christians. There's something at one of their chapels all day, every day. But where is that extended to for people that are not of a Christian faith? And then some of the barriers of a lot of carceral spaces, including Oklahoma Department of Corrections, have, the Christians are able to break into, the different groups, right? So you have the Baptists, you may have the Southern Baptist, you have the Catholic. So you have, all of these different little groups that they would put under this umbrella, and they're able to break themselves out, even the Orthodox Jew and the Messianic, so there's these different groups, right? But when it comes to Muslim, you're just Muslim, whether you're Nation or Sunni or Shiite or 5% or whatever flavor you are, they lump it all in one group. And so you're either Muslim and you have to do it this way, or you're not. And so there's not really the opportunity. And so when I go in, I am a Sunni Muslim, and so my practices may be a little different from another group of Muslims' practices. And so it would be respectful for them to be able to go and have services in their faith, in their flavor, so to speak, because that is what's best for them, and we don't do that. We lump them all together because it's easier. You don't have to you don't have to make any more slots for faith. You don't have to think of any more spots for religion or anything like that. They are just who they are, and they get to do what they get to do. But when you are Muslim, when you are one of the outlying faith groups, it's very different. They don't have that same opportunity.
And is that connected to, like, is someone from the community leading those groups? And so is there or is it something that they could, like, would it be possible for, like, if for a group of Muslims to like divide themselves into different groups, or does it need to be like,
so
here's what's offered?
Getting a space where you can have that is, it's different. You're not necessarily going to have that space. You say, okay, well, we are Muslim, and then they say, okay, well, this is the time that the Muslims are able to meet, and that is their time. And so, there may be in the gym. And so they may have, this group can meet back here and this group can meet over here. But there's not really, from what I have experienced, there's not many places that will allow them to separate. Now, sometimes they are resident led. So the people that live there, I hate the word inmate. So they are resident led, classes. And then there are more and more efforts for people to come out now and teach. There's always an opening for someone to come and teach and to be able to help. There really is. But it's just getting people to do that. That is, the big thing. That will be, do they want to come and do that? Are they willing to come and do that?
Okay. Just generally, what are the spiritual needs of the people that you encounter? Sort of what are they looking for?
They're really
What are
looking
they
for,
needing?
yeah, they need people. They need human beings to come and interact with them and teach them their faith and, guide them through that. You're looking at when we talk about um, this being one of the fastest growing religions in the system. We're talking about that from the standpoint of there are more people being Muslim, becoming Muslim in other spaces, but where is the access? Where is the help for them? I am so sorry.
You blowing up.
Yeah, I am. But there is definitely a need, for people to come and help. People come and serve. And where is that for them? Where is the help for them? How do we get more bodies? How do we get more information for them? Like, what does that look like for them? How do we get more people from the Muslim community? And so I don't just always talk about people coming to help. It needs to be culturally faith appropriate, language appropriate services.
Mm.
It really really does need to be, faith centered and people centered. um, and I don't know why it is difficult to get people in to do that, but it truly it is hard to get people to come in and serve in that capacity. you know
Is
you
that, oh, go ahead.
you can go in and look at all of the services for the faith based for Christian services, and they come in and there's a million, this list, you scroll for days and days and days and days. But then when you look at some of the other faiths, especially Islamic faith or anything like that, there's very few people that want to come and serve. And so it's harder for us to find that.
So you find that, at least in Oklahoma, sort of the idea of prison ministry is baked into a lot of Christian faith communities. That's just sort of like, we have our, various ministries, and prison ministry is a common one, but that you feel like that's not true necessarily for the Muslim communities.
It is not. It is not there. There's not. So the opportunity is there. I'm not saying that, we're not being blocked or, or kept out or anything like that. It's the people that have to want to do it. It is the people that have to want to come and serve. And that is the quandary or the problem, the $50 million question in Oklahoma. Like, how do we get people to come and serve? But then another question is, how do we have services that are human centered and not faith based centered?
So I feel like maybe what kind of infrastructure is there? I'm thinking, in a specific church or whatever, that there's someone who's leading a prison ministry, and then they sort of recruit from within that congregation. Um, is there a similar infrastructure? I know you run, I mean, it's just you, isn't it, who runs the Oklahoma Muslim Prison Support?
Well, I run it, but we have several, really amazing volunteers. We've just recently branched out and have some more volunteers. Um, and it's hard when they make your schedule during the day, and people are at work, and so how do you take off work because you need to see to your family? And so how do you have to take off work to go because it's not always easy. Um, there's not always access after hours or weekends. We would go in on Sundays like anybody else, but then there's church services on Sunday and no space for us to hold class.
So they, being the Department of Corrections, like only have specific times you can come in, and they tend to be during the workday.
Yes. Well, that's usually when the open spaces are, because, the weekends are usually faith-based services that are not, that are Christian. And I will say, they do really great job, most of them, to try to accommodate, when there's a space. But like for myself, it's usually evenings and weekends when I'm available to come out and serve. Um, and so how do you get around that? What does that look like? What does that look like? And that is very, very difficult for people to come out and do those things. And so how do we do that? How do we get more people in? But and it's not, we're not doing this huge drive for all of the people to flood them in with like Muslims and all of this. It is, how do we have services, programs, reentry? How do we have conversations that include uh, people? Like, not just, reentry and having a new pair of shoes or having a roof over your head is not a Muslim thing. It's not a Christian thing. It is a human thing. Human beings need support. And so how do we make some of our support that is human centered and not religious centered? I think that would be maybe a better question. Like, how do we do that? How do we make the system speak the language of humanity and not the language of just faith? Because my faith, so I wear a hijab, I wear a scarf. That doesn't mean you have to wear one. I should be respectful of you and you can be respectful of me. And two things can exist and be right at the same time. And so they can be of a faith, but they also can need services and do need services. And how do we provide those services in a human way that doesn't require them to accept a label or an experience that's not true to their experience?
I'm wondering if there's a barrier around just sort of fear, just about, especially maybe for those who identify as female, to go into like a male prison, that there's a perception that it would be dangerous, that they might be harassed. What's been your experience, or how would you address that concern?
So, I don't get to tell anybody else what their experience in life is, what their level of comfortability is. But there's so many ways to serve um, before going in. Like, there's letter writing campaigns. There are providing reentry clothes, brand new shoes, socks. You can go to the Dollar General and pick up a package of T-shirts. I mean, there's other ways to serve. People think that prison ministry means going into prison, and it doesn't. You don't necessarily have to be there. There's different ways to show up. There's different ways to hold space. There's donations. We pay for the phone calls, we pay for the mail, we pay for the emails. And so there's different ways to show up. There are gas cards for the people that do want to,
Mhm.
and feel like that makes sense for them to go into the prison. Have I ever had a problem, with a resident or felt unsafe? I can In the many years that I've done this, I can count on one hand the number of times that I have thought, oh, maybe this was a bad day to come to the prison, you know. But most of the time, it is, you know, uh, it doesn't work that way. It definitely is a safe space. It is, every, they're in there. Everybody makes mistakes in life, but I can't say enough and strongly enough and loud enough that we are not the worst mistakes we've made in our life. And some of the most dangerous people, the most vile people I've ever seen wear suits. So, with that, as you will, they have an office. um,
Oh,
and so these are people
perfect
that,
answer.
yeah, right. These are people that know that they've made a mistake. They know they've done something. My grandfather used to say, some things will get you sent to jail, some things will get you sent to hell. You know, and so everybody has made a mistake. And do you want to be defined by the worst moment of your life? In the worst moment of your life? And that's a timeout. And so people are not disposable. And so the idea of throwing somebody away for the rest of their life because of a decision they've made is reprehensible to me. Where is our justice? Where's our faith that we say we live on? We say forgive, what is it, 70 times 70, I think, is in the Bible. um, and so where is that forgiveness? Where is that rehabilitation?
And it sounds like, just I'm just picturing you just in the middle of the yard and people being drawn to you. I think I just read an article yesterday about trying to figure out a different way to meet people's spiritual needs because sort of organized religion or church or whatever just kind of is putting people off. And a Catholic priest was just sort of, I think in New York City, would just sort of go hang out, and just like people would just kind of be drawn to him that would say, oh, I'm not Catholic, but I just want to talk to you. Or, I mean, I think there's just some hunger generally. People have a hunger for deeper conversation, deeper connection,
No judgment.
those larger questions about life. And
Yeah, well, I mean, and so what do you think is gained by you telling somebody that they're going to hell? If that's your leading line, did you know you're going to hell? Well, yeah, conversation's over, right? Um, but leading with love, my mom and dad would say, you see a dog on the street, you put your hand out kind of gently and very calmly, and you allow the dog to come to you, and you kind of pet the dog and build a rapport and some safety and some space and connection with this dog, right? And then you give them some water, and you kind of lead into, is this dog going to allow me to be with them? But when it's a human being, we just snatch them up. Yeah, you will believe. And so we have gotten away from relationship. We've gotten away from conversations. We say we want to meet the needs of people, but how do you know what someone needs if you don't talk to them? I'm also a mental health first aid trainer. And sitting back and noticing somebody, so being a mental health first aider is your expert noticers, right? I notice that maybe you're not feeling yourself today, or you're a little off, or something's a little different, and it's about being in that space. Like, what can I do for you today? How can I serve you? And maybe it's just sitting there, like, just literally sitting next to somebody and being with them in their moment of grief, in their moment of sorrow. What does that look like? I remember when my son was on hospice before my little one passed away. We had a hospice chaplain come and see me, and she walked in the door, and you had filled out all of this different paper and things, and the person said, oh, you're a chaplain? Oh, and you're Muslim? Well, just call us back after he passes. There was no desire to sit with me. In that moment, I wasn't a chaplain. I wasn't a Muslim. I'm a mom. I am a mom who is preparing to bury her child. And in that moment, I thought there would be someone that would sit with me. When my mom passed, I am so grateful for the communities that build bridges. Huge, huge forever shout out to St. John Baptist Church in Oklahoma City. I never get this in the right order, I'm sure. Dr. Pastor Jimson. I don't know what comes first, Doctor
Major,
or
Major Jemison.
absolutely. Him and his family, his beautiful family, and the church family, um, phenomenal, phenomenal. They never see me as a Muslim. I'm a human being, and they are so welcoming. And to be in a room with the Christians and the Muslims, where they were there to see about a human being together, holding space together. Um, that's what ministry looks like. That's what humanity looks like. Putting another person before yourself, not wearing a label of faith, but living your faith. And so, if we could do a little more living it instead of labeling it and wearing it on a shirt or a bracelet or a tattoo or forcing it down someone's throat, like, that was the most beautiful people. I mean, when someone comes out and they are not Muslim and they need a church home or someplace that will be a safe space for them, that is where I send them, because I know there's no judgment, right? And it's not my job to tell someone in their hour of need, like, oh, you need to do this or you need to do this. God will speak to you, or what you believe your higher power is, or that voice. We say, who God guides, none can misguide, and who he leads astray, none can save. So that your conversation with God is between you and God. Like, I'm like this phone, right? I am a conduit for the conversation, but I'm not the conversation.
So I'm really feel like recently sort of exploring, sort of understanding what your gifts are and your like the ways that you can contribute. We can't all be like you were at our Interfaith Advocacy Day and we had that conversation about, we can't all be the one at the front of the march with the bullhorn.
Right.
You need people to cook the food, to wash the dishes, to take the trash out, or
Yes.
write the letters. So, sort of kind of reviewing different ways that people or different faith communities can help. So we talked about, some of those more tangible resources that are helpful. As you were talking, I volunteer with the Friends of the Library in Norman, and we would gather books for a prison ministry. And it just like, I just remembered as you were talking that was the request that they always made, was that they wanted more non-Christian books,
Yes.
particularly for those that practice Islam. So like books, gathering books, maybe letter writing. Are there people who or is there a need for people to just sort of be there for the families? And that's sort of, even if they never went into the.
Yeah. Well, one of the things we also talk about is the reality of abandonment. Like, uh, you know, when I became Muslim, so I grew up Christian, and when I became Muslim, there was this entire period of abandonment, like people that felt like I had abandoned my faith altogether. I had abandoned God altogether. And so you have families that um, don't are not of the same faith. You have now converted from another faith or no faith or whatever to something, to Islam, and you lose people, you lose things, you lose people, places, access. And so what does that look like? um, I lost really good friends. I remember sitting on the porch when I first became Muslim because my mom didn't want to allow me in the house with my scarf on. And so, we've heard countless conversations where people would say, they would rather their child disappear or be gone or be injured or just, fade away into oblivion than have a Muslim child.
Mm.
And so, change is hard. Change, and people are a lot of times scared of what they don't know, and they think that this is a violent faith or something they've read, somewhere, or um, have have watched an HBO movie or something about Muslims, and someone told me the other day, he says, well, Muslims are dangerous, Twin Towers. I said, I live in Oklahoma. White men are dangerous. Merle building. So, people are dangerous. People do more harm to people. And so we've got to just stop pointing fingers and labeling and just be kind. Like, really be kind. Just don't be a jerk. Be nice. And that's hard to do, but um, definitely showing up for what is in your wheelhouse. Like, what do you do? And so if you think about what you do, how could that serve someone else? And so, like library books for kids that are whose parents are incarcerated. Maybe a book for the dad that they can get in the library, but the child can have a copy of that book too. So when dad calls, they can read the book together. What are some things that you have access to that would be beneficial to everybody? Like, how do we do those things? How do we get those things to the people that need them? And so it's not really creating things. I don't think that it's super difficult. I think that it is just simply, you know, uh, whatever you have access to, what is your gift? And how can you use that gift for someone else? I think it's just truly that simple.
Do you see a need for other people of other faiths, non-Christian faiths, to do this type of work as well? Like, is there a lack of care or for like other faiths, like Buddhism or
There are lots of people of other faiths that could use support. Um, the Messianic Jews, I believe any group that you could think of, any group. So again, it goes back to what is your gift. Think about where you are and what you have access to, and go on the Department of Corrections volunteer site and see if there's a need for that.
Okay, so there's like a portal or a page.
There's a volunteer, I believe it's called Samaritan, and you can go on there and go through and see what volunteer opportunities there are. You know, and so there are human beings in there that need another human being. And so I would say that that's, and maybe you don't want to go in. So I'm not saying that that is a space for everybody. Maybe that is, you don't feel comfortable, that's not your thing, and that's okay too. That is perfectly okay. But just look at where you could maybe support someone that is actually going in and doing those things. And that would be something that I think you could do.
So how do people find you? Like, if they wanted to, would they go to that website or would they go through
Go
you and
that
connect
way.
them?
Yep, there is on social media, there's Oklahoma Muslim Prison Support. And please, if you have a hateful comment, keep it to yourself. Can't
Don't
say,
bother.
don't say anything at all. um, but yeah, you can find us on social media, Oklahoma Muslim Prison Support. We are on there. We are not as active social media wise. Come on, guys, I'm a 60-year-old woman. I'm not a social media guru. And so, and I'm doing the work. And so a lot of times it's hard to remember to stop and take a picture you're at the prison, or take a picture of this, or do this or that. And so that's another space where if you are a social media person and you have some hours to donate, or some hours that you need for community service, hit us up. There's so much for you to do.
So like in terms of time commitment, there's different, it varies,
Yeah,
you could, yeah.
absolutely. Maybe you have an hour a week and you want to schedule some social media posts. Maybe you have an hour a week and you'd like to help us look for grants, or write a grant, or um, buy a scarf and drop it off at one of the mosques for us. Maybe you would like to buy a book, a gas card from Walmart and drop it off at one of the mosques. Just, there's so many, anything from 15 minutes to, you have nothing else to do all week and you've got 40 hours a week to donate your time. We love it. We are here for it. We'll make space for you. We will make room for your gift.
Are there sort of like collection sites at different mosques for materials that could go?
Yeah, so mosques are great collection sites. I'm going to get in trouble for that, but but definitely, if there's something that you would like to donate to the prison space, IST in Tulsa is they are some phenomenal people. They are amazing people. 48th Street Mosque, ISGOC, Norman Mosque. If you go in and say this is for the Oklahoma Muslim prison or the Muslims in prison, they will definitely know who to direct that to. And so I wouldn't say don't go drop off all of your clothes and you're this. Please don't do that. They will not be pleased with me. But I mean, if you have gas cards or, contact us on social media. Leave us a message and we will definitely get back to you and see if we can meet you. I'd love for you to meet. Adam Sultani used to say, if you don't have a Muslim friend, you have one now. Hit me up. I'll answer your question. Book.
You said gas cards. Where, some of these facilities, if you are going to go out, are in kind of off places. Where kind of which facilities are like do you go to? Or
So,
people are all over the state. So,
all
but
over the state, all over the state. And it's not just me. So there are other volunteers that go. And so, if we can help them, because gas is getting kind of high. So if, we could give them a $30 gas card, a $10 gas card, something to help them with that. A lady dropped off a couple of gas cards. I think it was like a bundle of them, and they were all for like $10. Um, and she's not Muslim, just, hey, here, I hope this will help. You know,
cool.
roll us. Well, we don't really do mail anymore. We send emails and things like that now. But clean socks, new socks, new t-shirts, new tennis shoes for the reentry. We never have enough toothpaste, toothbrushes, floss, chapsticks for when people get out. Body soap, deodorant. Q-tips, you would be surprised. $5 at the Dollar Tree, the dollar and some change tree. is, a couple of bars of soap. If you are a dentist and you have 100 toothbrushes, we will take them.
Yeah, because you're also talking about after they get out.
Right, reentry.
Mm-hmm.
We'd like to be able to give them a little bag, and to be able to help with the things they need. There's so many things going through your mind and so many things that you need to do when you get out, to be able to lighten that load for you a little bit, and just to give you a shower caddy, with all of the things in there that you would need, maybe a loofah sponge, to get all of that stuff off your body, soak in a tub for a little bit, something smells good. Those are comforting things. And how can we tell you that you're welcome and you're loved and you're seen?
Anything else that we didn't cover?
I think that's about it. So thank you so much for sharing this space with us and having just this conversation. I am so glad that there are people like you out there that make being a human being possible and not being put in a box and labeled. We're just humans and we belong together.
No, I love this conversation. I feel like I'm the student in so many ways. So just asking all my questions. because I do think this maybe is a little off people's radar. And, in looking for ways to contribute, a lot of people feel powerless right now, and they don't know how to help or what to do. And so I think that sort of doing that inventory of sort of what are the ways you could contribute. This will hopefully kind of open up some eyes and open some doors.
Yeah. And so, not everybody has the same talents. Maybe you have a tea and have a conversation about how your faith group reaches outside of your faith. Like, have you made space for someone that is not of your faith? And so maybe that's where you start.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So you are Oklahoma Muslim Prison Support on Facebook
on Facebook
and
and
Instagram.
on Instagram. Absolutely. Yep.
And you have a website?
We do not, but if someone would like to build one for us, we are here for it.
Another great volunteer opportunity.
Another great opportunity for someone that needs hours, that's out of college or high school for the summer. That is a great idea for you.
Okay.
So yes, but
yeah.
yeah, just on social media, reach out to us.
Okay.
We'll reach back.
Well, thank you for all your work. You're just such a light in Oklahoma, and really appreciate everything that you do and who you are.
Thank you so much. Well, I love being in a space where we are all equal. I love it. So thank you so much. And everybody that has joined us tonight, have an amazing week. May God bless you and shine his light on you and give you guidance.